Williamson in the house. One of the OGs.
Yeah. But it's nice to be here. Appreciate the invite. And it's been doing a fantasy thing for a while. So but it never gets old. That's one of the fun things about fantasy is you're just like, every week is a new puzzle to solve. Every season is a new puzzle to solve. There's 100 different ways you can go about it. And, so there's just, it keeps the mind active for sure.
Well, there's one way that pretty much is consistently effective, which is leveraging cheap running backs.
Yes, definitely.
I mean, that's never going to change. That is the thing you can set your watch by every year. Leveraging cheap running backs is a tactic, and if you're not doing it, if you're not winning the cheap running back game, if you're not setting yourself up with your builds to benefit from cheap running backs breaking out, then you're doing it wrong. That we can all agree on.
100%. And, this week and last week, we've really started to see that too. I mean, these guys that you hold and you hold and you hold, and it gets hard to hold them, but you still hold them. And now they're starting to pop. So, give me the Bucky Irvings, give me the, all the goodness, Kamani Vidal, all of it. I want all of that. And we even get guys that are popping that we didn't expect to pop, like Sean Tucker. So, it's all great.
People expected him to pop last year, though.
Right. I mean, he was one of those guys who I had on, stashed on pretty much every team that I was drafting all throughout the summer, and then we kind of got into the preseason. And it was like, yeah, the Sean Tucker thing's not going to be a thing. So he went away from my redraft, but Dynasty still hanging around there. So it's nice to see.
These late round athletic running backs that just were raw when they came to the league to take a year. Chase Brown's another one.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And by the way, I know, how dare you, Harry Snowman, in the chat, assuming this is pre-recorded. This is live, so you can go ahead, and me reacting to this live on the show, this disproves your contention that this is pre-recorded. So just me reacting live, not in the chat, live on the show.
That's it.
Disproves your ridiculous statement. Of course we're live. Pre-recording? When was the last time I pre-recorded and dropped it? Get out of here with the pre-record. We don't do that. Now, sometimes we pre-record other shows, right? And you do a couple shows now on the network. So that's what I love to see. I love to see people that are smart, people that know things and that have unique perspectives, getting more and more and more activity with the Player Profiler media network, where you see, oh, look at that. Oh, there he is again. Oh, a little bit more of a footprint. And that's what I love. So you have, in the off season, you do Stack Hunters with Bradley Stalder.
Yep.
And now you're doing Fantasy Empire. So talk about Fantasy Empire.
Yeah. And first off, I want to say, Matt, I really appreciate the platform too, because I mean, that's a great thing for somebody coming in like me to have this, platform that's ready-made, that already has a broad reach and everything. With the GOAT District, we had scratch, but here everything's right there. So it's a wonderful thing. So thank you very much for that. And the Empire, it's the latest show. Myself, Chris Vaccaro, Nelson Sousa, and Matt Modica, and these are three high stakes guys who have won boatloads of money. We can't talk about how much money they've won because, frankly, we don't want the IRS listening in and getting any ideas. But anyway, they have won fantasy tournaments. They have won high stakes fantasy leagues, and they are just absolutely at the top of the high stakes game. So we get together every Tuesday at 11 o'clock, and we talk through, and that's in the morning, 11 o'clock, not at night, 11 o'clock, in the morning. 11 o'clock. And we talked through what we saw last week, what the future looks like through a high stakes lens and the ground. And we're looking for those edges in a season-long FFP, like the main or the NFFC contest, like the primetime standalone leagues. And also, Matt, I've got a secret for you. It's not just for high stakes players. It's really for anybody who likes winning their leagues and is looking for ideas on how to manage their teams to do it. So you don't have to.
That's
play
the question.
high
If you
stakes.
watch poker on YouTube, right? You watch high stakes poker on YouTube. That's what they're showing. But you can absolutely use every single one of those strategies to win your home game or your home league. In this case, this is what we do. We want to have people that have skin in the game, that have proven to make thousands and thousands of dollars playing fantasy football, and we want to have those proven performers that can talk about their real life drafts, their live drafts, their real life waiver wire pickups, real actual trades that they're doing. We want to have those individuals, as many of those individuals, on the network as possible. We don't limit the channel based on, some algorithmic calculation, right? You might say, oh, well, you have Nelson Sousa, you have Dan Williamson, you have all these smart guys coming in, they want to do a show. Yeah, but, we have a show at 6 and a show at 2, and then that's all that we can handle to optimize the clicks. We're not here to optimize the clicks. If it's great content from people that know what they're doing and have the receipts, especially high stakes, we have more high stakes content creators at Player Profiler than anywhere else. That's what we're going to prioritize. And if that means sometimes we're dropping 3, 4, 5 shows a day, great. Hello, that's bad? Excuse me?
Exactly. And the nice thing about the high stakes is, like I've got 60 leagues. I'm not sure how many of these guys have, but with 60 leagues and you're doing your waivers and you're making your lineup decisions and everything, we're making literally thousands of decisions per week. And, you get the benefit of all that is because we've done this week after week after week, thousands of decisions. We see what works. We see what doesn't at a much faster pace than, somebody who's doing 2 or 3 leagues. So that's where you want to tap into it, is to be able to catch people who are able to progress much faster just due to the sheer volume that they're doing. To me, that's the big thing about high stakes. You can put me in a league with 11 other people, and if they're reasonably active, they're going to give me a challenge, and they're going to give any high stakes player a challenge. But since we do make so many decisions all at once, that kind of gives us the edge. We're a little more likely to make the right decision. And not that I'm tooting my own horn. I mean, it's just, anybody could probably do that. You just need to get in there and get the reps.
Now, looking at week 6, was there a stat? Was there a particular performance that really caught your attention?
Yeah, like Baker Mayfield hanging 51 points on the Saints. That was something. The Saints came into the game. They were 7th best in scoring defense, 17.5 points per game. And they'd played Dallas, Philly, Atlanta, KC for the first 5 weeks. And back when Tom Brady was a quarterback, those games were snooze fest. You were getting like 6-3 was one game, I remember. There was like a 13-6 game. It's just like there's no touchdowns getting scored. And, Baker hanging 51 points on him was just amazing. I know the Saints have problems, but I really thought Baker might regress when Dave Canales left, but he's actually gotten better. He's a little bit who we hoped Kyler Murray might be. And right now he's, don't tell anybody, but he's leading the league in fantasy points for quarterbacks and, the 4 point per touchdown leagues.
Now, if we go through the league and look at retread quarterbacks, Pittsburgh as a retread quarterback, doing very well. Detroit as a retread quarterback, doing very well. The Colts have started a retread quarterback recently, doing very well. You go down the board, there's these retread quarterbacks. Now, Daniel Jones isn't a retread quarterback, and he's not even doing that well, but he's soon to be a retread quarterback, right? How about Sam Darnold? There's another retread quarterback doing very well. Baker Mayfield, yes. Andy Dalton, Kirk Cousins. I mean, it's actually it's pretty amazing when you go down all the way to Geno Smith with all the retread quarterbacks that are productive early in the season, even Derek Carr. Right? So we're talking about I listed like a third of the league are having success with retread quarterbacks.
Yeah, it turns out experience makes a difference, huh?
Yeah. And that just because a quarterback washes out in one location, it is far, far, far from a wrap.
Right, exactly. And that's the thing. I mean, you need the right support system around a quarterback, for them to really have the best chance. I mean, there's quarterbacks who are just good right out of the box, like, CJ Stroud, good right out of the box. Jaden Daniels has been good right out of the box. And,
Caleb Williams.
That's
Drake Maye.
Yeah. I mean, talent is going to come out, but for the players who are a little bit, maybe not quite at that level, the support system can make all the difference in the world. Look at, let's take Sam Darnold for an example. Kevin O'Connell, puts him into a system that fits him very well, and he tailors the offense to what Darnold does well. And that's what you want to see out of a coach. I mean, Darnold finally got a chance to get a reset with San Francisco. And if you go back and listen to some of my podcasts from like February, I was calling for Darnold to be the next Baker Mayfield or the next Geno Smith, because, I was like, this guy, before he even got to the Vikings, I was like, this is the guy I think that has everything if he can just land in the right situation, which he finally did. So
finally did.
Yeah, and I think that means wheels up for J.J. McCarthy next year, too, because I think he's going to benefit from all that, and Darnold's going to go out and get himself paid.
That's right. Darnold's going to get himself paid, and partly because of Justin Jefferson. And then J.J. McCarthy's going to come in and benefit from Justin Jefferson always being open, always getting yak, always securing the football in traffic, et cetera, et cetera. Now, sometimes wide receivers land in great situations. I mean, the receiver that has led the most blessed situational career, but has also delivered in a big way where it's undeniable that he's elite, irrespective of the situations that he's landed in, is Tyreek Hill. Now Tyreek Hill is struggling to put up 12 fantasy points a game because it's Skylar Thompson and whoever, right? Tyler Huntley,
Snoop Huntley, yeah.
Yeah, who cares, really? Like, it's not Tua, and it's not a quarterback that can really sustain a 20 fantasy points per game wide receiver. We're talking about a field stretcher plus. That's what Tyreek Hill is. This is a field stretcher, but he can also take carries out of the backfield. He's involved in all these gadget plays, bubble screens, and he can just run a straight up, clean out route and get you a first down. Like, he's a great receiver. But it's predicated on his speed. And he's 30 years old. And he's in a situation where Tyler Huntley is his quarterback. And then at some point it'll be Tua again. But the days of him scoring 20 plus fantasy points a game are over. Or are they?
Well, are they? Are they, Matt? I don't know. You get Tua back there, you get some accuracy on those deep throws, and Tua's not even the most accurate quarterback on deep throws, but he's
no.
he's better than what we've seen in his place. To me, what was shocking was the fact that they had this quarterback who clearly had injury issues, and that's what a concussion is. It's a brain injury. Let's not off or anything like that. I mean, it's an injury, and the more you have of them, the more likely they are to occur. And they went out and they signed him to a big contract, which basically assumes he's going to perform, which I think is a sketchy assumption. And then they don't even back him up with a decent backup quarterback. They let Mike White go off to Buffalo, who doesn't even really need him because they got Trubisky. So, what were they thinking in Miami? That's what I want to know.
I gave them the benefit of the doubt with Skylar Thompson. I was like, they must see something in Skylar Thompson to let Mike White go. Mike White's a quarterback that had a 400-yard game with the Jets. That's not easy to do. I'm like, why would you risk it? Why? What this? It led me to the natural conclusion that Skylar Thompson must be underrated, and then turns out no.
Yeah.
So what do we do with Tyreek Hill? Tyreek Hill is 30. He's 30.6. He's best comparable to Steve Smith. And Steve Smith was productive out to age 35. So it's looking like Tyreek Hill as a productive wide receiver at age 28, 29, 30. The Steve Smith comp given his stature and his speed-based game, looking like one of the better comps in the history of Player Profiler. But does that also mean that Tyreek Hill might be even? Is this a buy? Is this a buy window in Dynasty even?
I think it could be. It really depends. Of course, buy windows and sell windows are very specific to each league. You can have a Tyreek Hill manager who is just, all about Tyreek Hill, and I can't wait till Tua gets back. And then you have another one who might be going, you know what, I'm going to sell a little bit low, but I'm going to get out now while I can. I can get a relatively decent price, and I'm just getting out of the business. So, but yeah, I would, if I've got a team that's competing, I wouldn't mind taking on Tyreek Hill, as long as the price is right.
So you're 60-40 on the acquisition side of Tyreek Hill, not the sell side.
Yeah, I would say that's pretty accurate. You got to get the right price, but it can definitely be worth it.
60-40 on the Tyreek Hill acquisition side for Dan Williamson. Now, let's give us the player that's disappointed you most. Either last week, maybe you thought he was gonna go nuclear and didn't, and it was inexplicable, or just in general for the whole season, like just a player you're just like, I fully expected to get this level of production for all these reasons. These reasons have actually come to fruition. Like what I expected to happen for the situation has happened. It's played out perfectly, and yet you, the player, have not delivered. Is there a player like that you can think of?
How much time do we have here, Matt? I've got a few. I got a lot of problems with these people. Now you're going to hear about it. So
you must have some disappointing players in your portfolio.
I do, yeah. I mean, I would say Dalton Kincaid, but I kind of expected him to disappoint. If you go back to things that I wrote, things I said on podcasts early in the offseason, I was saying Kincaid is just not an alpha. He needs an alpha. They don't have an alpha. Keon Coleman doesn't qualify as an alpha. So, what we're seeing out of Kincaid is pretty much what I expected to see. So I can't really say he's a disappointment to me, but I know he's a disappointment to a lot of people. Who I would say is a disappointment, and I'm gonna give you the two for here. It's Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, I can understand one of them being a disappointment, but you've got to figure one of these guys is going to pan out, right? So, I spent the offseason, this league I'll take Calvin Ridley, that league I'll take DeAndre Hopkins. One of these guys is going to work. You know where they rank in wide receiver points per game, Matt? Do you know where they rank?
Tell me.
81st and 83rd. That's just wide receivers. That's not all players. That's just wide receivers. 7.3 points per game, 7.1 points per game. That's gross. Calvin Ridley just had an 0 for 8. 8 targets, 0 receptions, 145 air yards, and he got a bagel. I mean, come on. Will Levis is killing that team, just absolutely killing that team. They've got to make a change at quarterback.
But some of it is Calvin Ridley being overrated.
Maybe a little bit, but he's, I will give you this. Nobody finds a way to do less with more than Calvin Ridley.
Okay, thank
100%.
You. Okay, thank you. Yeah, he had a big season. I know he had a big season in the year that Matt Ryan led the league in pass attempts. He did.
But with DeAndre Hopkins around, you're like, okay, well, if they're going to focus on DeAndre Hopkins, then Calvin Ridley is going to, he's going to at least be serviceable. Even if he's not great, serviceable. He's not even close to that.
Yeah, I'm most disappointed in DeAndre Hopkins in that situation because I assume DeAndre Hopkins is an alpha. He takes care of his strength and conditioning. This is going to be the Will Levis go-to receiver, not Calvin Ridley. So I haven't been tempted by the Calvin Ridley siren song at any point. But Hopkins, it's like this guy, yeah, he's in his early 30s now, but he has the body type of a guy that's productive out to age 35. So that is very disappointing to me. So I have a question. What if, speaking of overrated wide receivers, what if Calvin Ridley and Marvin Harrison Jr. had a baby?
It would probably have a baby quarterback that could not get him the ball. That's probably what would happen.
Oh, you turn that into a Kyler Murray joke. I love that. I love that very much. So here's what I would say. Marvin Harrison Jr. even though he was concussed, and that's part of the reason why he didn't produce. I think we can now definitively say he's not as good as Malik Neighbors. That's clear. I think that he's going to struggle in his career to keep up with Rome Odunze now that Rome Odunze has Caleb Williams. So for me, Rome Odunze is the buy of buys in all formats. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think he's a good buy. I mean, right now you cannot put him in your lineup, and
I know.
He's got so much talent. So, that's your definition of a buy right there, is you want to be on him when he does emerge, because honestly, when I was looking at Keenan Allen and Cole Kmet, I'm like, one of these two is going to just totally erase the other one, or they're going to just kind of half erase each other to the point where neither one of them is super duper startable. And, what's happened is they've been, kind of the engine of the offense the last couple of weeks. And, you're looking at Odunze being kind of the guy left out, but Odunze has so much talent, and Keenan Allen, he can get hurt anytime. This is a guy you want hanging around on your bench because, all of a sudden everything's going to align for him. It's going to click, and boom, there he is with a quarterback who's started to figure out the NFL and is starting to look really, really good. And he's going to be playing a bunch of games against high-powered offenses. The NFC North is like, oh my gosh, the fantasy goodness there is incredible. Yeah. So they're going to have Chicago. I don't care how good their defense is. They're going to have to score to keep up a little bit because, these offenses, they're going to be able to solve the Chicago defense a little bit, and so there's a lot of goodness coming out of Chicago, and sooner or later, Odunze is going to be a part of it.
We just need a few more offenses to try to solve the Detroit defense, right? But now Aiden Hutchinson broken tibia. Ooh,
yeah,
I broke my tibia as a kid. I mean, it is not good, man. The cast came all the way up around my hips. I had like a hole for my wiener that they had to drill into the cast. It was bad. It's a bad situation for Aiden Hutchinson. Hopefully, at some point, we get some offenses figuring out Detroit because I think that's one of the things that's holding back Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta. Is that they don't need to pass the ball anymore in Detroit.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, we know that there's going to be a lot of offense coming with Detroit because they're not going to let up on the accelerator, right? We saw that with Dallas. I mean, obviously they had an axe to grind with Dallas a little bit, but it's all good. But you can't think that they're going to sit there and look at the Vikings offense or the Green Bay offense and say, hey, we're up by 20 points. That's enough. It's just not going to happen. So, they're going to get out there and they're going to score points. So you got any part of the Detroit offense, you're happy.
Who's the RB1 there? Gibbs or Montgomery?
Oh, man, that's such a good question. You've got Montgomery, that with that 2-year extension,
you're going to have to give a quick answer.
Happy.
I fucked you,
okay.
Man. I really fucked you by starting the music early.
You did.
We're going to have to get into this after I do the proper introduction.
All right.
It was clearly, I thought it might be a rap. I started it because I thought it might be a rapid fire response, but it wasn't, and therefore we're going to get to it in a minute. Welcome to the Mind of Mansion program, a true stack hunter and the host of the Fantasy Empire. This is one of the original GOATs from the GOAT District and a GOAT in this business. Here with me today it is Dan Williamson. Talk to me.
Yeah. This is exciting. We're on, week 6 is done. We're almost halfway through the fantasy regular season, Matt. This is the exciting part. We got players coming back from injuries. We got, it's bye weeks are happening. This is where you make your money or you lose your money or you get to have the bragging rights over your league mates. If you're managing right now, you're doing the right things, it's going to pay off. And if you're just sitting back and going, yeah, I don't have time for my fantasy team, guess what? You're losing.
Gibbs or Montgomery?
It's Montgomery, really. When you come down to it, Gibbs is capped by Montgomery. I mean, Gibbs is your long range guy, but Montgomery is the guy who's getting in there doing the dirty work. They're going to reward him on the goal line. I thought it was going to go the other way this year. I faded Monty hard. I thought he was a low ceiling option. I thought Gibbs was going to be the guy who kind of broke out, and Montgomery was just kind of like, he'll get you, 10 points, 13 points, maybe 15 points. Nope. Hey, I was wrong.
Theo was Team Gibbs. Billy was Team Montgomery. And I lean Gibbs now because Gibbs is getting a lot of carries. If it were one of those situations where Montgomery's getting the vast majority of the carries and they're just sprinkling in some Gibbs with 5, 6, 7 carries a game, fine, right? But I really think this is a Kamara Mark Ingram situation. And in those years in New Orleans, Kamara would outperform and outproduce Mark Ingram because they were in these shootouts and they needed to score points. And yes, Montgomery has scored more fantasy points this year. There's no doubt about that. But when you look at the numbers and you look at the touches and you look at the snaps, Gibbs is the one that's actually on the field more. Gibbs is the one that's out touching Montgomery. It just hasn't broken his way with long touchdowns in the passing game. Those are coming. He's so explosive, and he is getting 15 plus touches almost every week in one of the high octane offenses in the league. I'm going to trust that over the course of a 17 game season. But at the same time, David Montgomery's going to score 15 touchdowns. They're both going to eat. They're both going to be top 10 running backs because of this offense and this defense. And with the injury to Aiden Hutchinson and some shootouts coming up on the schedule, I'm feeling Jahmyr Gibbs. I'm feeling it coming on. I think your instincts were right to be bullish on Gibbs. It's just that it wasn't at the cost of David Montgomery. There have been scenarios in the NFL, especially when the NFL is a little more run heavy, and the NFL has tilted more to run. When you look at the pass to run ratio around the league, so most teams are a little more run heavy now. That with the 20 plus points of positive game script this team's getting some weeks. That's why Montgomery can be sustained. So Gibbs and Montgomery are going to finish top 10. The real casualty here is Sam Laporta, number one, and secondarily, Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams. Jameson Williams is going to be very volatile. There's going to be weeks you start him just because you're chasing that spike week, as you should in the flex position. I like chasing wide receiver spike weeks in my flex, but it's just not going to happen. You just got to be ready for it just to not going to happen. And thankfully, Amon-Ra is getting there with touchdowns. Thank God, man.
Right. Yeah. Because, basically Amon-Ra is at this point, to quote one from one of my fellow goats, Andrew Schellenberg, he is fancy Julian Edelman, I guess is the way you could put it. Yeah.
Oh, he is.
And, and that's fine. I mean, he's going to be in your starting lineup every week, but he is not one of those elite receivers, in the way of Justin Jefferson or, Nico Collins or Jamar Chase or any of those. So he's a different sort of cat.
And we know what Jameson Williams is, right? Jameson Williams is a Deshaun Jackson type. These guys, we've seen these guys before, and they're going to give you 20-point weeks, and it's going to be great. But it's just you got to shave down the cap a little bit because Detroit has not been challenged by many NFL teams. They're that good. I just don't know how this Aiden Hutchinson injury is going to impact the defense. I don't want it to hurt the team. I love that this team is thriving. It's the Lions, for Christ's sake. They've been a joke, a laughingstock, a punchline for 30, 40 years Of course, this is what we all want to see. We don't want to see injuries, but there is this silver lining of this Aiden Hutchinson injury is the potential of a little more offense, especially in the passing game in Detroit, because we know now Jameson Williams is for real. He's never going to be like a Garrett Wilson level player. Like, that was still a mistake to draft him over Garrett Wilson. But in the context of this offense, when you have Amon-Ra on the other side and you have Sam Laporta and you have Gibbs out of the backfield, it is the picture-perfect situation for a player like Jameson Williams. Put Jameson Williams on another team, he's going to struggle. In this particular system, especially a pocket passer who has time to throw and he has time to get open down the field, it's perfect. If Jameson Williams goes to another team in free agency, you better trade the hell out of him. Trade the hell out of him in Dynasty.
Yeah, I mean, he's your ideal number 2 because he can do enough, because he's not just a deep threat. He can do some other things, but he's also not going to be the kind of guy who's going to thrive against, facing a team's top cornerback every week. He's not going to thrive when the offense runs through him. He's going to thrive when the offense is running a little bit more through somebody else. And that's exactly, of course, what he's got in Detroit, and the thing is about Montgomery is if we get into more shootouts, Montgomery goes down, Gibbs goes up. But yeah, also I think it helps Jameson Williams a little bit. I think it'll help Amon-Ra St. Brown a little bit as well. So, these guys are going to get their targets. And you said it exactly right. I mean, Jameson Williams is such an ideal flex because he's that guy who, he might get you 5 points, but he might get you 25 points. So I love guys like that. Putting him in the flex. There's this myth that consistency is so great. And I can't stand it. Consistency is, to me, it's a little bit less of a, it's more of a bug, and inconsistency is a little bit more of a feature, because if you're inconsistent and you've got, some kind of floor under there, 5, 8 points, whatever, and you can get up to 25 points occasionally, those 25-point weeks are what win you games, what win you everything. So that's what you need.
Thank you,
Simple.
Dan. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. This is why we keep going back to Darnell Mooney. People are going to bench Darnell Mooney because he didn't do anything in week 6. Oh, he done it out in week 6. We're not going back to Darnell Mooney. Stop. No, please. This guy's an auto flex. You got to get him in there.
Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, there's not much to think about. He's on a high-powered offense with a quarterback who can get him the ball. He's one of the top options on that offense. He's a team leader. So, these team leader guys rarely get squeezed out when it comes, when the target squeeze comes, it's somebody else who's probably going to lose targets. Mooney has been fantastic. He's been, everything we hoped he could be, because honestly, he did great with the Bears his rookie year. And then he had that, he had the sprained ankle, and he had to have the tightrope surgery, which is getting to be like, a 4-letter word to me, tightrope surgery. I don't want any players that have had any part of that the following year. It's bad. They just generally don't, Tony Pollard last year had the tightrope surgery. It's just, it's the kiss of death for the following season. And then now he's back. He's on a good offense. That's what you want.
It's like this. If there's a tightrope, I think there was an interesting documentary called Man on a Wire about they somehow allowed, back when there was the World Trade Center. This is a true story. This is a true. I saw the documentary. It's true. They somehow let this guy. They would never let you. This is so 70s. This is like the 1970s. Perfect example. There's no way this would happen now. They let him attach a wire between these two buildings, and then he walked on a tightrope across between the two World Trade Center towers. That it is one of, if not the most insane things I've ever seen in my life. Right?
Yeah,
it's right up there with Christopher Columbus sailing away, having no evidence that there's anything on the over the horizon. Like that's right there on Columbus Day. We will say that. And my daughter and I had an argument this morning about Columbus Day, I think a lot of parents are having to reckon with this whole changing of Columbus Day. And she's like, Dad, this is why you're a dad. This is why I make fun of you, because you say stuff like, it should be just called Christopher Columbus Day, and you call Christopher Columbus a hero. And I'm like, can we talk about what this guy did? Can we talk about the context in which he decided to go sailing? Can we talk about this for a second? This wasn't just an ordinary sailboat voyage, okay? It was anything but. So give this man some respect, you kids. God.
I mean, there was literally the thought that he might fall off the edge of the world.
He was sailing to his certain death, according to like 80% of the population at least, okay?
I think that's a very low number.
Yeah, probably 99, whatever. Like, it was a lot of people thought he was an idiot, right? This guy, unfortunately, the man on the wire across the World Trade Center, he didn't really gain anything, right? He didn't like change maps or anything or a whole worldview. He just made it across. Spoiler alert, shit. Spoiler alert. Damn it. I'm sorry.
You missed it. The sounder was right there.
It's worth it. Shh. Spoiler alert. That's my fault. That's a spoiler. But he made it. He made it across the wire. So that's the thing. That's how you got to think about these guys that have the tightrope surgery. Okay? They're walking across. Let them try to make it that season. So Pollard avoid. Mooney avoid. If they make it from one building to the next season, get all of them. Right? All the Pollard in round 8. All the Mooney in round 14. That's what you should have been doing. If he makes it across the tightrope, but it's a season, you got to wait.
You brought it home there, Matt. I wasn't sure where you were going with that, but you brought it home. That was very good. That was very nice. He made it to the
new world.
Yes.
So yeah, that's the right. Pollard is in a whole new world now, right? In Tennessee. Mooney's in a whole new world in Atlanta. Look at this. Back to Columbus. Oh, that's a double. Double callback. I feel good today. I feel great.
Yeah. We're popping. We're hitting it.
I feel better than Deshaun Watson. Okay. Another 168-yard game. I feel like every week is 168 yards. If I had to guess, like how much passing yards did Deshaun Watson put up this week? I said, about 168, right? I bet. So is this the week we get Jameson Williams or Jameis Winston?
I mean, you got to wonder, because I don't know if there's some sort of edict from the owner that Watson isn't getting benched, because at this point, Stefanski's
there is. That's for sure.
Yeah, Stefanski's coaching for his job. He can't be happy about it. The locker room doesn't like it.
He's going to get fired anyway.
It's been Winston time since the moment they signed him, to be honest. My friend Scott Pianowski has a saying, once the cheese goes bad, it rarely gets better. And that's exactly what's going on with Watson. He has lost his mojo. Everything that's, I don't want to say everything that's happened to him, because he brought it all on himself, but everything that's gone on, I think, has absolutely beaten him down to the point where he's lost that mojo, lost that confidence that you've got to have to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. He no longer believes in himself. And if he doesn't believe in himself, there's no way that a team can believe in them.
That's right. And I mean, think about Browns quarterbacks back through time. Look at what Baker Mayfield's doing this year versus Deshaun Watson. I love just the juxtaposition of Baker Mayfield putting up 50 and Deshaun Watson putting up 6. It's just it's so perfect. It's just the team's like, "Oh, Baker, what happened? We want you back." Speaking of quarterbacks that are having bad weeks or bad seasons, or not what they were, Dak Prescott.
Oof. Do we have to talk about him today?
3 fantasy points. 3 fantasy points.
He cost me a game in a dynasty league that I could have won by playing Bo Nix, for God's sake. Or if Dak had just gotten 1 TD pass, that would have done it. I mean, it's the most tilting thing possible.
It's very tilting. Dak has been very tilting, and he just got paid. I mean, that's the other thing. That's the other correlation between Dak and Deshaun Watson. It's after you get the $250 million, everything crumbles.
Yeah. Well, I've got two words for you, and they're Brian and Schottenheimer. And those are not words that you want to use in conjunction with an offense, especially one that you want to perform well. The only thing that looks more lost, though, than the Cowboys offense is the Cowboys defense. And so that's a double whammy. I mean, you're putting Dak into a huge hole, and then he's got to try to pass his way out of it. So, of course, he's going to take some chances. You know, I don't think Dak is the greatest quarterback in the world, but I certainly don't think he is deserved all of the steam that he's getting right now, all the, you know, everybody bashing on Dak. And I get it, but I mean, this is a systemic failure. This is not just a Dak failure. It's a systemic failure. They've got to make some changes over the bye week. You know, Mike Zimmer, I don't know what he's doing on defense. I don't know if anybody knows what he's doing.
Mike Zimmer's still in the league? How old is he?
He's still.
I feel like he was 70 when he was on the Vikings.
Well, you know, check his girlfriend. She is something else, but yeah. I think he's spending more time on her than he's spending on the defense. That's for sure. You know, and Dak is still the quarterback 10 on the season, but I think that speaks more to the overall sorry play by quarterbacks. You know, he's had 3 clunkers, and still he you know, he's quarterback 10 because he's had some really good games too. So it's very, very uneven. You can't count on him, and that's a tough thing. I mean, you know, Dak needs to be one of those players that you can count on. You know, everybody drafted him that way. If you picked him up a Dynasty in a trade or something like that, that's what you were expecting. And we're just not getting what we're looking for there.
If you were starting a franchise today, you want Dak Prescott as your franchise quarterback or Brock Purdy?
Oh, yeah, I'll take Purdy.
There you go.
Honestly. Yeah.
There you go.
I mean, you've got to have the right system.
Dak Prescott.
You got to have the right system for a quarterback, but it's not right to call Purdy a system quarterback either. I think Purdy excels in the system that he's in,
right?
But he's more than that. I mean, you know, I think Purdy would look fine in most systems, just not as good as what he looks in San Francisco. You know, he would be in a system that didn't fit him well. He'd be like an Andy Dalton. In a system that does fit him well, you know, then he looks like a guy who was, you know, competing for MVP towards the end of last year.
It's fascinating. So what do you think of my contention that in 20 you're going to see Dak Prescott back in the playoffs? I genuinely believe that. I think he will be. I think that Dak Prescott's going to be back in the playoffs in 2027 as the starting quarterback for the New York Jets.
Oh, yeah. Okay. There you go.
This is what we talk about, these retread quarterbacks. Dak's going nowhere. I don't think it's sustained. I don't think that it's possible that he can survive and thrive in Dallas. I think that it's just too much, and I think that everyone, the organization, the media, the fans, the facilities staff, I think everyone is going to be done with him. Maybe even CeeDee Lamb at some point. Who knows? But I think eventually he's going to find his way somewhere else. Like eventually everyone, including Sean McVay, lost faith in Jared Goff. And now he's sitting atop like the best team in football.
There you go. Yeah, honestly, the Packers' playoff loss last year was sort of the canary in the coal mine for this. You know, if we'd only recognized the signs, that was the harbinger of what's happened this entire season.
That's right. That's exactly right. Can I just mention some funny things that happened this past week?
Let's do it.
Pretty funny how Najee Harris in a lead back role had the exact same fantasy points and production, you know, down to like the fractional yard, right? of Tyler Allgeier, who is an auxiliary back. I think that says a lot right there about two different offenses, two different players, like two players that are very similar, but on different ends of their career. It's just I thought there's an interesting dichotomy. I'm always fascinated when I see this. I'm like, look at that. That performance was the mirror image of this performance, but there's this alternate universe where these two people are existing.
Right. Yeah. It's the same in the foreground, and the background is completely different. But, now we were just talking about Calvin Ridley, Najee Harris. He's another guy. Set the bar as low as you'd like. Najee will find a way to get under it. 100%. And
meanwhile, like Allgeier is the best handcuff ever.
Yeah, he is. He's very good, and he's a Falcons closer. And the Falcons are going to use a closer a lot. They're not playing fantasy football. They don't care about your Bijan shares or anything like that. They're going, you know what? We got this game pretty much wrapped up. We're going to put Bijan in bubble wrap for the most part. We're going to run Allgeier out here, and we're going to let him close this game down. So they weren't lying when they said it would be a timeshare in Atlanta. It most definitely is. And what's wild is, we talk about. I'm going to go way off topic here, probably, but
please
just bear with me. We were talking about this on the Fantasy Empire, which is coming out tomorrow. But it's amazing. We say that if you're at the back end of the draft, right, Matt? You can't be chasing the running backs at the back end of the draft. If you've got the 11 hole or 12 hole, you can't be taking running backs because you know what? That's no good. The people at the front end of the draft, they've got CMC, they've got Bijan, they've got Breece, and there's
oh no, they got Breece Hall.
There's no way to keep up with it. So you say, you acknowledge, I can't keep up with these running backs, so I got to draft wide receivers. And what happened to the wide receivers at the back end? You've got AJ Brown, you've got Cooper Kupp, you've got Nico Collins, you've got, all the wide receivers at the back end are getting hurt, and all the running backs at the front end were getting hurt. So it turns out the right move was probably to just grab Saquon and Derrick Henry and laugh your way to the league title.
Or even Saquon and Drake London.
That too.
I think you're gonna be very happy with getting an AJ Brown at the back half of the first round.
Probably so. Yeah.
I think that the bottom line is the best draft pick of a running back early was late first Saquon Barkley. That was in hindsight the move, but also in foresight, because 5 years, 6 years that we spent talking about what if with Saquon Barkley, and then it's almost like a genie came out of a bottle and granted him his every wish, and then we said, nah. I'd rather have Breece Hall. Like, what?
Well, Saquon, he's too old, and he's lost a step, and he just doesn't have the same wiggle, right? And Derrick Henry, too old. You can't have a 30-year-old running back. Come on.
All right, so let's go back to Tyler Allgeier for a minute. Okay.
All right.
Let's focus on Tyler Allgeier. We want actionable advice here. So, because we could victory lap on like the August drafts for the rest of the show.
Yeah.
We're not going to do that. We're not going to. I spent enough time doing that. Allgeier, is he closer to Najee Harris, or is he closer to David Montgomery?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think he's probably a little closer to David Montgomery, but
I love Allgeier, man. You can tell.
Yeah. He is very good. He's got the skills. It's just, is Atlanta going to use him like Montgomery? And that's the big question. I mean,
not exactly, but I'm saying close enough.
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly within the range of outcomes. I think he's going to be more of that than Najee, because
as long as Bijan is healthy, Allgeier is very attainable, right? Very attainable. Just like David Montgomery was very attainable in Dynasty for years, even in seasonal leagues. Like, he was a sell high candidate, supposedly, right? You could take advantage of all the people that thought he was a sell high candidate. Well, as of right now, Allgeier still very attainable for now. For now. And I like to get out ahead of these things.
It's the way to do it. You can't sit there and buy the current production because you're going to pay 3 prices for it every time.
Yeah, as long as we have a healthy Bijan, you're always going to get a discount on Allgeier. Take the discount. It's taken 6 weeks of like meaty RB1 production for people to finally start waking up and realizing, oh, David he was a great pick. Great dead zone pick. Yeah, another great dead zone pick with Pollard and this long list of running back options. Yeah,
Aaron Jones,
a healthy
James
Aaron
Cook.
Jones, and we can just keep going on and on and on and on and on and on and on. And, sweet spot for receivers, round 3, round 4, round 5, not necessarily the most sexy receivers, right? But delivering. Look at Chris Godwin, right? This guy was dealing with some serious injuries that would cost a lot of players games, and yet he comes back from the torn ACL, comes back from ankle sprains and hamstring strains and all these things the last couple of years, finally is back healthy, is still in his late 20s. He's still Chris Godwin, man.
It's amazing, and he's in exactly the right role, a role that was built for him. He's, if you want to make the Rams comparison, because of course Liam Cohen came from the Rams, he's in the Cooper Kupp role. And we already talked about Baker, who's looking better even than Matthew Stafford. He's 5th in wide receiver points per game, and all the wide receivers above him, A.J. Brown, Neighbors, Rashee Rice, and Nico, have missed time already. Godwin is leading the league in total wide receiver fantasy points as we sit here today.
What? Is that true?
That's true. Everybody's sleeping on it.
Holy shit. It's amazing. Does he have more fantasy points than Anthony Richardson?
I'm fairly certain that he does.
I'm sorry. I just can't. I just can't. The excusing away of Anthony Richardson's Florida career has been something else. The parallels of Anthony Richardson's pre-draft process and Carson Wentz's pre-draft process. I mean, this whole thing, it's maddening to me. And yet it won't matter. It won't matter. They'll back the truck up to Anthony Richardson the moment that he's playing again, even though Flacco has been the one that's winning games. Flacco's the one that is sustaining their weapons. And it's always interesting to me how these players like a Will Levis and Anthony Richardson were not good college quarterbacks. They had physical tools, and not everyone is Josh Allen. Josh Allen broke the brains of so many fantasy analysts and scouts and NFL draft personalities, right? Because they're not even analysts; they're really just personalities, and it's fascinating. It's just to me, it's fascinating. And like a Josh Downs, for example, I didn't draft any Josh Downs because Josh Downs with Anthony Richardson's fucking useless, right? But if you told me it was Joe Flacco under center, I would have been piling into the Josh Downs.
Exactly.
That's the thing.
And the Colts are stuck. I mean, they're stuck. They can't sit there and play Flacco. They can't do it.
They can't do it. They've got to go back. So the read on the situation is it's going to be Anthony Richardson this week, right? Because he was an emergency quarterback.
Yeah.
I don't know if he was active, inactive. I don't know if you can be an emergency third quarterback and be inactive. It was very confusing. The whole injury report on Anthony Richardson was a complete catastrophe. I still don't know if anyone can figure it out what happened. Either way, he didn't play. And they went back to Flacco. I just think it's a coach that said, I know Flacco's my better chance to win, and I'm going to use every opportunity I can to maximize the number of snaps we get with Flacco until I'm forced forced to go back to Richardson.
Exactly. It's all couched, and we're giving him as much time as he needs. We're going to make sure he's 100% healthy before we bring him back in, because he's such a high level player when he's fully healthy. So we don't want him kind of operating at 70% or 80%. We want him operating at 100%, and that's how you justify keeping Flacco for around for a while. But eventually, with all they had invested, they got to go back to Anthony Richardson. And you know what? I mean, you're exactly right. You can't sit there and chase the Josh Allens, because you know what? He's an outlier. You chase the outliers and you find, you're more than likely not going to find another outlier. What you're going to find is what you would have expected from Josh Allen, which was for him to totally tank Will Levis style. So
Calvin Ridley was 0 for 8.
Right.
In week
exactly.
6.
And even if they wanted to, is it worth it to be a borderline playoff team with Joe Flacco? I mean, they lost to the Jags and they barely beat Tennessee with Flacco. So, they've got to go back to Anthony Richardson. But the problem is that they're looking basically at fancy team Tim Tebow here.
But Anthony Richardson, he hit the ceiling with a throw in one of these indoor facilities. He hit the rafters with a throw. That means he's a Super Bowl caliber quarterback, except one of the best quarterbacks in the league, who's winning the most games, who just had 29 fantasy points, was the last pick in the draft, not the first. Didn't have hitting the ceiling level arm strength, because that's not what matters, man. It's insane. Yeah. It's insane to me. It's insane to me that a player with as embarrassing of a stat line every single year that he was a quarterback at Kentucky, and then he comes out at age 24 or whatever it is, that he can have so many scouts insisting this is a top 10 pick, and then the NFL is like, slow down. We're taking him with the first pick in the second round. And then still fantasy analysts are like, this is the Levis breakout year, and it's foolish. And so, like I said, I can draft the number one. I'll draft Hopkins, right? I'll roster even a Pittman, not at his ADP. Pittman's ADP was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't that a crazy ADP this summer? The Pittman ADP. I mean, again, if we knew it was Flacco, would have been happy to pay it. He would have been a second rounder. But what?
Exactly. And that's the thing. If it's Flacco, that's one thing. But when it's Richardson, and Richardson himself was the easiest fade around in drafts, because you know what? You can get Jaden Daniels 3 rounds later. Why wouldn't you get somebody who can actually pass the football and has that same running talent versus somebody who's just basically a runner who is a very rudimentary passer?
I said that exact thing. I said it. I said, where is the evidence? Right? Where is the evidence that Anthony Richardson is a better passer than Jaden Daniels? And if you can't give it to me, then what the fuck are we doing here?
Exactly. I got one Richardson share in all of my teams. It's we have a thing in the high stakes. We call it the FOMO shares, because what if what if. So it's like, okay, well, he fell in this one draft, so I grabbed him, and I'm still kicking myself over it. So
I mean, there are toolsy quarterbacks that hit. It's not just Josh Allen. Jordan Love was a toolsy prospect.
Right.
Okay, so it's I'm not saying that Josh Allen's a once in a million shot. What I'm saying is it's less than a 50% chance. What I'm saying is a guy like CJ Stroud puts up those numbers, even a guy like Bryce Young, right? The odds are a Bryce Young is going to hit at being drafted at the 101, putting up 60 touchdowns at Alabama. He's probably going to hit above 50%. A guy like Anthony Richardson, a guy like Will Levis with that college resume, probably not going to hit. But not 0.1%. There's some percentage. It's just you can start to see some growth and development there was a little bit of growth and development there, especially in year 2, second half of year 2 for Josh Allen. If you're paying attention, you can start to see these things. You don't have to be a hero. Like, Anthony Richardson gets drafted. I'm like, cool. He's a guy where I'm going to monitor the second half of his second year, and he has time. It's possible. I'm not even saying he's doomed. I'm saying we need him to get healthy. They're going to commit to him because they're committed. They're pot committed to Anthony Richardson. The second half will be very interesting to see if he can start to make some incremental gains. And then you might actually get him as a value in year 3 in fantasy football. That's how to play that. Same thing with Will Levis. Right?
Exactly.
It took Jordan Love years to finally become who he is today, whether he's working behind Aaron Rodgers or he's just not ready for whatever it is. So know what we're talking about in terms of a prospect profile. A guy like CJ Stroud, the prospect profile is this guy is ready for prime time on day 1. Like, this guy walks off the assembly line. He's ready to be a robo quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's one of the most precocious prospects we've seen. He just, and that's a thing. I mean, if a quarterback is really, really good, you're going to be able to tell almost right away. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, even though he didn't start for his first full year, other than one game, you saw that one game and you're like, oh yeah, he's got the it factor. You can just tell when a quarterback knows what's going on and the game isn't too fast for him, because that's the part that they just cannot predict with quarterbacks is, accuracy. It's tough to learn accuracy. Somehow Josh Allen did it, but also, the processing speed, the game being, slowing down and being slow enough where the quarterback can make the reads. He can process all the information that's coming at him. I mean, you and I, Matt, I won't speak for you. I could never play starting quarterback in the NFL. Just even, the intellectual, like processing speed that's required is just, it's out of my wheelhouse. I mean, that is like a superpower. There are very few individuals in the world that have the processing speed to handle that. So it's
that's
amazing.
why I think Dak is eventually going to have success elsewhere, because he has shown that, right?
Yes,
he has shown
exactly.
that. Like, he's shown that he can do the. So I just think that the chat wanted me to do that again. The thing is, I love when I feel myself being dated when I start to think about references in my head, and then I'm embarrassed to mention them, but then I do it anyway, because I'm that guy, and I'm that sort of dad life, right? # dad life. So I'm like Police Academy. Like, when I say Police Academy, Dan knows Police Academy, right? Dan and I are, similar generation, right? We're Gen Xers. So most people, when I say Police Academy, they don't know what the hell I'm talking about. But there was a guy in this movie called Police Academy who had the most amazing ability to like throw his voice and make these like robot noises. It was the best. It was the best thing ever. So you could just do Police Academy highlights on YouTube and you can see exactly what I'm talking about. But I think without watching that movie as a kid, I would never have tried to learn how to do that noise with my voice, which has made me such a great podcaster.
And I got to tell you, Matt, we use that movie as one of Dad's bad movies. That was a thing when my girls were growing up. I have 3 daughters, all adults now, and when they were growing up, we would have Dad's bad movie night, and so it would be like Airplane or Police Academy or something like that. And
I didn't Naked Gun.
Yeah. So we'd watch these movies that were just, like so terrible and so full of dad jokes and everything else. But it was kind of fun too, because it was sort of a bonding thing. They would groan and, oh my God, I can't believe that. And, but we had a great time together, and that's the most important thing. Spend time with your kids like that.
Yeah. See, the sound effect guy in the Police Academy is legendary. Absolute legend. So because the Colts are pot committed to Anthony Richardson, I do believe that Josh Downs is a sell high.
Yeah. He's got to be. I mean, it's always. I think he's legit talented, and I'm always reluctant to sell off that good talent. But
Sure.
because if something around him changes, but the thing is, he's kind of stuck there. Anthony Richardson is kind of stuck there. So you're if you're holding on to him, you're probably holding on to him for a couple of years before things really change. So it. You don't want to do it, but you got to do it.
Now, Brian Thomas' situation is also getting worse. Trevor Lawrence is flailing. I'm not sure, has the information processing that he really needs. There is something missing with Trevor Lawrence that I believe players like Dak have proven they have that ability. Trevor Lawrence has not yet. Brian Thomas ran into all of the negative forces that a receiver can run into. Jalen Johnson, great receiver coming back to the lineup in Evan Ingram. So I think that was an interesting case study of a guy to sit, even though he had been booming week after week. It was just an interesting scenario that played out for us week 5 with Brian Thomas. What's your overall take on Brian Thomas as a player, his likely production profile moving forward this season? How do you feel about him?
Okay, so I think mostly he's got a Trevor Lawrence and a Doug Peterson problem. Jalen Johnson definitely didn't help, but
Right.
When you're giving, I like Evan Ingram. I think he's a great tight end. I like what he does for fantasy. I'm not sure he's really helping his team out as much as he is helping fantasy players out, because he's getting all these catches, but you're not really going that far, and Brian Thomas can actually, he can be a game changer. I think at this point, from what I've seen, he's probably, if I could go back and redo a rookie draft, I may take Brian Thomas over Marvin Harrison Jr., honestly.
Oh, yeah.
And the thing is, I was talking about this. I'd sent out an offer in one of my Dynasty leagues on Sunday night after, not this Sunday, but the week before. And then we got on the Fantasy Empire podcast. And I said, Brian Thomas is just, he's a flat out stud. No matter what you do, you got to hold on to him. And then after the show was over, I go back to my trade responses, and this guy says, yeah, I was thinking about that deal, but then after you said he was, you got to hold on to him no matter what on Fantasy Empire, I think I'm not going to take that deal. So I cost myself a trade. But if you've got him in Dynasty, you got to have diamond hands with him.
This is the price we pay, man. We're in these leagues with people that listen to what we're saying, and they front run us on waiver wire pickups, and it's a thing that happens. This is quite the cross we have to bear, Dan. This is quite the sacrifice we're making here, right? But I think it's clear now.
But it comes with the territory.
It's a cross. I'm happy to. It's a very light cross. It's not a cross at all. It's nothing. It's nothing.
Yeah.
Marvin Harrison no longer a top 3 receiver from this class. Neighbors, Odunze, Thomas. Bye-bye, Marvin Harrison. That's going to be what we have to monitor over the next few weeks. Now, on the player profile or dynasty rankings, you're still going to see Marvin Harrison above Brian Thomas, above Rome Odunze for sure, just based on their draft capital, what they've produced so far. Like our 3-year projection on Marvin Harrison is going to be higher. But it's something to monitor. You're going to see it start to erode. My prediction is even after week 6, we're going to start to see it erode. Even though Brian Thomas and Odunze didn't produce, it was because of the situation. Also, Harrison had the concussion. We'll see how he responds to that. But over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, watch the player profile or dynasty rankings. See how Brian Thomas and Rome Odunze can catch Marvin Harrison. Like it's quite the horse race to watch those 3 in Dynasty, knowing that Neighbors is just so far out ahead. I'm cheering for the underdogs. I'm cheering for Thomas and Odunze to catch this guy.
Yeah. So can we talk about the Ohio State wide receivers real quick, Matt? I mean, Marvin Harrison
Mm.
Jr., Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. What do they all have in common as pros?
They were sustained in college by C.J. Stroud.
and they've been kind of disappointing ever since
Right,
they hit
and
the pros.
and now they don't have C.J. Stroud in the pros, and they're not as impressive.
Exactly. Yeah. This is, and the thing is, they're not terrible, but it's, I made on X a couple days ago, I made the comparison between JSN and opening a slightly stale bag of chips. And it's the only thing you've got to eat. You'll still have a few, but it's not what you were expecting. It's like, yeah, this is, and that's the same thing with JSN in your lineup. I don't want to put
1,600-yard seasons, Dan.
Yeah.
It's almost like
really
that's the reason. That's how we created the Dominator rating. The Dominator rating was not created by us necessarily, but it's why we highlight it and we feature it on Player Profiler, because it is a share of that player's production in college. Mm-hmm. And for some of these Ohio State receivers, their Dominator rating is not impressive because they were a cog in a machine and they were not able to produce at a level that would be commiserate with most elite receivers that you see in the league. Even though they're putting up the counting stats, these are offenses that are throwing for 5,000 yards, and they're not able to separate themselves from one another. Olave and Wilson couldn't separate themselves from JSN.
Yeah, it's a good point. And, they were even saying JSN was the best of us, which is kind of an interesting quote. And he's, you're never excited.
But then they were like, well, but that's Marvin Harrison Jr. And then every year at Ohio State, it's, oh, but this guy. Oh, but this guy. Oh, but this guy's even better. Oh, but this guy's even better. Hey, how about stop falling for the banana in the tailpipe, Ohio State wide receiver?
That's the key right there. I mean, you just put a bow on the whole thing. Perfect.
I do. That's another 80s movie, by the way. Beverly Hills Cop.
Indeed.
Right. There's another movie where a lot of references that I find funny, and my daughter's like, I don't think this movie's for me, and I'm like, yeah, it's probably not. It's like most of these movies I pick.
We grew up in a better time, Matt. I mean, just face the facts. I mean, we
grew up in a hell of a time. We grew up with the art that we had at our disposal, from music to movies. It was less about clicks, less about the box office revenue. Movies could be made back then just because it was a good idea. Like, there were artists that were actually in charge of like movie studios. And same thing with the record labels. They had real people that actually made music in their life, not just those riding a wave of algorithms. Right? So now it's all about, once the algo took over and it became all about the math with music and movies, that's how you get just, a never-ending stream of one-hit wonder singles artists and a never-ending stream of Marvel movies. Right? You might say, "Oh, you guys, this is a back in my day segment. You guys are cranks." This is like every other like a boomer YouTube channel. Congrats on your mid-level content, guys. I know that's what the millennials are saying and the Gen Zs are saying. And my response to that is, you're wrong. We're better. It was better. 70s, yes. 80s, 90s. That's when all the great movies were made. That's when all the great songs were written. It's a fact, and you just have to eat that.
And you know why it was better? Because we had more freedom. We did not have an internet to be slave to. We didn't have, you went outside to play. My parents had no idea where I was most of the time.
Oh
None.
my God. Oh, we did it. We hit it. We got the Infinity Stone. We got the last Infinity Stone. We played outside, Dan. That was
Yes.
the last one. We completed the whole set of Back in My Day. Brilliant Back in My Day segment. Love it.
Perfect. Yep.
More buried headline. Okay, this is some buried headlines. Ready for buried headline game? We're back to fantasy football. Buried headline. Kenneth Walker goes 8 for 8 in the passing game, or TJ Hawkinson is running routes.
Yeah, I think everybody's pretty much aware that TJ Hawkinson is running routes, but I'm not sure if people caught the 8 for 8. And that's what makes Walker so, he's a top 5 back the rest of the way, honestly, because he's on an offense that moves the ball. There are problems in Seattle. There's no doubt about it, but it's not Kenneth Walker. He's got a bell cow roll. Charbonnet is just there to spell him, give him a breather every once in a while. So he's getting the yardage on the ground. He's getting the touchdowns. He's getting the carries. He's getting the targets. He's getting it all. And they're using him, it was great to see in a game script like San Francisco, they're behind. And that's where a lot of times, your star running back just gets totally nerfed by the script. And it didn't happen because you know what? They just started feeding the ball through the air. Perfect.
All right. The chat really does want to dig in on the era of art, right? So the era of art. So let's just call it like 1965 to 2000. Or no. I don't want to include late 90s rock in this. We'll just say, but then we have movies like The Lord of the Rings. So it's a bit tricky. We'll say 65 to 95, and then we know that we have to pull in some songs and some movies from the edges, and that's fine. But we have a millennial in the chat that accepts this. He says we accept these facts as millennials. And what I will say as a millennial, he's very lucky that he did get the millennials based on where the generations cut off, right? The end point and the beginning point of these generations. The millennials got to experience the 90s in pretty much in full. So they're doing fine. It's really the Gen Zers that are really fucked.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Yeah. It really is. I mean, you start with Revolver. That's where you start it. 1964, the Beatles, Revolver. Boom. That's right. Okay, let's do that. We'll do that. We'll do a 64 to 99, something like that. Yeah, I think that pretty much book. I don't want to include 2000. Fuck that. No. So we'll do that. That'll be our 35-year period, and that's it. We saw 10 more targets for Brock Bowers. I believe it's Brock Bowers and George Kittle as the two tight ends you want to be playing week in, week out, the rest of the season. I think those are your top two tight ends. Would you agree with that? Yeah, I like both those guys a lot. Bowers is going to have a tough time coming by the TDs, but he's going to be getting reception after reception after reception.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And I have 10 burning questions for Dan Williamson. 10 more burning questions after this. Hey, I know it's a popular statistic to cite, these underdog pick'ems, the vast majority of people go more than on any given player. Yeah, close to 80% of people, but that's because it's easier to find the shootouts than it is to find the dud games every Sunday afternoon. Like we knew week 5, Ravens-Bengals was going to be a shootout. And there goes Lamar Jackson for 4 touchdowns. There goes Joe Burrow for 5 touchdowns. Derrick Henry gets there. Zay Flowers is over 100 yards. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins both got there, as well as Chase Brown. Both Chases got there. You go more than. You win 100x your payout on Underdog with their Pick 6 contest. But then you look at Dolphins Patriots, that's going down the toilet, right? Too bad Ramondre Stevenson had 18 fantasy points. But you improve your chances at positive returns when you correlate with these Underdog pick'ems. Use promo code Underworld. This is the biggest bonus Underdog has ever given out, up to $125. Promo code is Underworld. Put in $250, you get $125. Now go start picking. So in that Underdog talk that I just had, Underdog promotion, I let my Maine accent slip out. So you have a Minnesota accent.
Oh yeah.
I have a Maine accent, but it's heavily suppressed. But if anyone wants to go back and listen to that, there is a word where I in the Maine and you're about to go to Maine. You're about to take a trip to Maine to see the leaves turn, and you'll notice some similarities between Canadian accent, Minnesota accent, Maine accent. There's some the shootouts, right? So it's in there. It's in there. If you pay attention, it's in there. It's in there. So let's talk about the rookie of the year. Now it's a conversation. Or is it?
I mean, it's going to be a conversation for sure. Obviously we'd have all said Jaden Daniels to start the year. And Caleb was looking just completely lost, and it was not entirely his fault. I mean, the Bears did him no favors whatsoever. They were leaking like crazy through the middle and everything else. The offensive line was just not handling the job. But now Caleb is putting it together. It looks like they've kind of adjusted their protections to the point where, and maybe it's just who they're playing right now. But I think it's going to come down to who takes their team the farthest as to who gets the rookie of the year. But I'm going to say Jaden Daniels. I think Caleb is probably going to have a little bit more trouble down the stretch once he really starts playing those NFC North games. And, there's just not as much standing in the way for Jaden Daniels. So give me Jaden.
I think so. I think 1 week where Caleb Williams outproduces Jaden Daniels, not enough for me to be like, okay, I think that's a coin flip. No. Caleb Williams has been great, but it was the Jags. Let's slow down. Let's slow down. I still feel like it's in Jaden Daniels' range of outcomes to actually be the NFL MVP. And I don't see that for Caleb Williams.
No.
How tough is Joe Mixon, man? What a warrior this guy is. Holy cow.
Yeah. Top 5 rest of the way. I mean, honestly, he's in the perfect situation.
Yeah.
Plays on a good offense.
Now, you're in Minnesota. You remember seeing Stephon Diggs when he was breaking out.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure. Now, I don't know this. I mean, I listen to a lot of your shows, but I don't remember exactly. But this is one of those things where I don't remember exactly the show where you talked about it. I don't remember the tweet exactly. But I know one thing in my bones, that you were heavily exposed to Stephon Diggs this year.
Heavily, without a doubt.
Okay.
Easiest smash out there. Easiest.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's only 30 years old. Oh, they're going to move him into the slot? Oh, as if that's a bad thing?
Exactly. He was such an easy smash, even with Nico around. As far as skill and savvy goes, he's one of the best in the game still. And the thing is, he turned into a headache for Minnesota. He turned into a headache for Buffalo. But the Texans knew exactly what they were buying when they got Diggs. And they set the table for him exactly as they should have. His contract voids after this year, so he's got incentive. He's out there earning for next year. If he has a bad year, he's not going to get paid. And they have the option. They can let him walk or they can re-sign him if they want to dance with the devil in the pale moonlight again. See,
that's right.
There's another reference for you. First Batman movie.
Listen, man, the first Batman. All respect to Christopher Nolan. The Michael Keaton Batman. Come on now. That's an easy one where you might have a millennial that's all about the Dark Knight, and we're like, Michael Keaton. Come on, stop it. But yeah, making those investments in these veterans, these truculent veterans at a discount because the personality clash with Joe Mixon in Cincinnati, personality clash with Stephon Diggs in Buffalo. We are playing for a championship here. Come down here and win a championship with a true leader. That is one of the markers in the sand for me for a true franchise caliber quarterback is, can you start to bring in troubled personalities and then suddenly when they get to your team, everything's okay. It's the Tom Brady corollary, right? Tom Brady,
Yes.
they just did what? Just send them Randy Moss, send them anybody that has been a quote unquote problem for other teams, and then they get to New England or they get to Tampa, and it's not a problem, right? We're going to get the best out of Leonard Fournette. Like we're going to get it's not going to. You can send murderers and they'll produce with Tom Brady, and I think that's the level of leader that we are now seeing with C.J. Stroud. That's the level of leader that we're getting in Philadelphia with Jalen Hurts. So it's really cool and impressive when these quarterbacks, they put up big statistical seasons, but then you see suddenly the franchise having the comfort level to bring in troubled personalities, knowing when they arrive in Brady world or Hurts world or now Stroud world, there's a calming influence there, and they're just going to produce and play football, and it's going to be great.
Right, because they know that they can only be as good as their quarterback. So number one, they want to have a good quarterback. And number two, the thing they don't want to acknowledge is they need a quarterback who's a strong leader who can overcome their personality. Because you know what? Stephon Diggs, he overcame Kirk Cousins' personality, honestly, in Minnesota. And he became the overwhelming force, and it turned out to be worse for him because you know what? These guys can't always get exactly everything that they want. What they need is the ball to be spread around a little bit more and for them to be an important cog in a full machine rather than the centerpiece.
Christopher Reeves, Superman. Right. And by the way, no one's discounting The Dark Knight. I love Christopher Nolan. I love Christian Bale. I love the story. I mean, it is one of the great movies of the 2000s. It's great. It's great. But the iconic character of Jack Nicholson, I'm sorry. I know it is one of the great movie dichotomies where you have a reset of a franchise was just as good as the original reset of the franchise. And then those early, but I believe that the first Dark Knight movie was not the Dark Knight movie with the Joker. I think that was the next one. Right. So yes. Right. So okay. So here's my out here. Okay, is the first Dark Knight didn't have the Joker, so it can't compete with the first Batman of the Batman series with Michael Keaton, and then the second Christian Bale Batman dominates the second Michael Keaton Batman. I think that is where I think we can find some agreement. I know there's going to be disagreement on the first of both. We're both great, and the Gen Zers will certainly cape up for the Christopher Nolan version. I get it. But I'm telling you, man, as a kid, I don't know how many times I watched that first Batman. I mean, incredible.
Jack Nicholson as a Joker was just such a great performance.
Incredible.
Too. I mean, he had so much fun with that role.
I mean, the fact that you've had three people, play the Joker at such a high level. I mean, that is also, if you think about, you have Joaquin Phoenix as just an incredible Joker, right? Now he won it. Let me look it up. Did he win an Oscar?
I don't remember.
I think so. Yep. And then we have, The Dark Knight. Okay, we have Heath Ledger. Right, rest in peace, Heath Ledger. Right, so the Dark Knight was the second in the series, I believe. So again, I'm not 100%. was it The Dark Knight Rises? Was that the first one? And then just The Dark Knight? I don't know exactly the put this in the chat. Someone help me out. I'm flailing here. I don't know the order of the titles of the Christopher Nolan Batmans. So someone needs to help me out. We have The Dark Knight Rises, and you have Batman Begins, and then you have The Dark Knight. And I don't know the order of those three. Let's figure it out right now. So The Dark Knight Rises, that was 2012. The Dark Knight Rises, that was the third installation. And then Batman Begins, I believe, was the first one. That was in 2005. Batman Begins was the one where, like, that was Liam Neeson was in that one, right? Where he goes to Asia and he finds him and extracts him and brings him back and all that. That was also a great movie. So this is what I'm saying. The Michael Keaton first Batman was better than Batman Begins. But The Dark Knight was potentially the best of all of them. And the fact that it happened after 1999 is incredibly impressive and a testament to the talent of Christopher Nolan and Christian Bale. And the fact that we had 3 iconic performances by 3 iconic actors playing the same character across decades is one of the coolest phenomenon in the history of movies. I think this is all fair, what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm there with you. And somebody mentioned it already, but Danny DeVito is the Penguin in the second of the original Batman trilogy. Though of course I'm old enough to remember when Batman was a half-an-hour TV show on Adam West. That Batman.
And here it is. But Jared Leto also played the Joker in another version, and he wasn't bad. There's arguments going on in our chat right now on YouTube about Leto and whether he was any good. I think he wasn't bad. I think Leto. I'm not going to put him in that. Obviously, not putting him in that triumvirate of iconic performances as the Joker, but it just goes to show the material that they had to work with had to be, peak in order to have that many great performances. The material has to be that good. And this is one of my favorite distractions in the history of this show, what we've just done. And the way to save it, the way to save this and redirect this back into actionable fantasy football advice is to talk about none other than Tyrone Tacy. League winner.
I hope he is.
22 fantasy points in a complete shit show of a game.
Yeah, and you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube either. He's got way more juice than Singletary. I don't know how this is going to go moving forward, but I do know you can't just sit there and try to stuff Tyrone Tacy right back in the box and pretend that it never happened. You can't go back to Singletary being the dominant player here. I don't know if they'll entirely nerf Singletary, but I'm not sure if he's going to be startable moving forward. I think if they have eyeballs and in their head, Tyrone Tacy is going to be the lead back, and we're going to see Singletary as the complementary piece.
This is one of the areas where coaching does matter, and I do trust that Brian Daboll is an above-average coach. I believe that to be true. And these are one of the decisions that, a lot of football fans wouldn't put much weight in. Who cares who Brian Daboll is giving snaps to at running back? Well, fantasy footballers care a lot. And so I think that he is going to see this and want to get more and more and more Tyrone Tacy as the season goes along. Very encouraging. And the thing is, you can go to Player Profiler. You can see Tyrone Tacy. He looks like a mini Saquon Barkley, and he's doing exactly what Saquon Barkley used to do in a shit show Giants game, putting up 22 fantasy points. Go check out Isaac Garendo while you're on Player Profiler. I mean, there's a bunch of interesting waiver wire pickups this week. You got Garendo, you got Pierre Strong, you got Sean Tucker, you got D'Ernest Johnson. There's a lot of options, man. Again, running backs, guys coming completely out of nowhere and producing.
Yeah, I don't care how deep your league is. At least one of these guys is probably available in your league. So, unless we're talking about Dynasty. But Garendo, he's already on all my rosters, but he probably has an expiration date after the next 2 games. You got to think that Jordan Mason is coming back, and or Christian McCaffrey is going to finally start playing after the bye. Worries me a little bit that Patrick Taylor got so much run during that game, but I think it was because they weren't really sure what they had in Garendo. So hopefully, they saw that run that ended the game basically by Garendo, and what a size speed freak. And that's what you want to have on your rosters. I mean, I don't really want to roster Patrick Taylor. The guy does nothing for me. I think, if there's Garendo, Mason, CMC, doesn't matter who, somebody's, all these guys are better than Patrick Taylor. So, don't be spending a lot of money on Patrick Taylor. I think
what these guys like Garendo has to prove that he can get north and south, right? So the thing you're looking for is he Bryce Brown, right?
Right.
There again, there's another Gen X reference from Dan and I.
That's a great one. I like that one a lot.
You don't want Bryce Brown. Great measurables, size, speed, the whole thing, but bounces everything outside, always trying to outrun everybody, doesn't get north and south. Can this guy get north and south? Is this guy going to fumble? Is he going to pass protect? Is he going to stand up to linebackers in pass protection? They've got to see these things. It only takes a game or two to see these things. And if Garendo with 220 pounds running a 4.35, if he can do that, my God, man. So that's a priority for me, because that's also the offense that you want. Even when McCaffrey comes back, he's going to be an instant injury risk the moment he comes back. Now right. Jordan Mason's banged up. Jordan Mason is a solid player, but he does not offer the big play capability that Isaac Garendo does. So Isaac Garendo, I think, is going to be the priority this week on the waiver wire, but also Kamani Vidal. I mean, Kamani Vidal is a sleeping monster, is he not?
He is. Yeah, if anything happens to Doppins, this is where you want to be invested. I was massively overweight on him in all my formats, and I've held on to him. Despite having some teams that were just complete injury wrecks, I'm not letting go of Vidal. And then all of a sudden, Gus Edwards goes on injured reserve, and I'm like, thank you. This is exactly what I need. So,
Gus Edwards is a warrior. He comes back from injuries. We don't wish him harm.
Right.
I respect the hell out of Gus Edwards, but for fantasy gamers, sometimes an injury is what's required to convince coaches, because otherwise they're not able to be convinced. They're going to be loyal to the guy they brought in that they liked, who's a veteran. And sometimes a team is better off when there's a change in personnel for whatever reason. And in this case, when you go to Player Profiler, I mean, Vidal has Pacheco-level metrics, as does Garendo. There were some real weapons at the running back position in day 3 of the NFL draft.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. And the Chargers use their running back so heavily that a second running back is always going to be involved there. So, all you had to do is take a look at that one wheel route for a touchdown by Vidal. I mean, what a thing of beauty. When you got a running back who can do that, and you've got an offensive coordinator who's going to call that, that's what you want to see. And
the call, they wouldn't need, if he was a traditional between the tackles grinder from a small school, elevated for the first time, it's impressive. They're going to call a wheel route.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that's why you want to roster as many lottery running backs as you can, because you want those lottery tickets. You can't be rostering replaceable wide receivers at all. you want the back end of your roster to be pretty much all running backs. You gotta have a couple of spare wide receivers, but you don't want to have 6 wide receivers sitting on your bench and 2 running backs sitting on your bench or something like that. That's exactly backwards. If you want to get a wide receiver off the waiver wire pretty much any week, you can. I write an article every week for Player Profiler where I detail wide receivers you should be able to pick up in pretty much any league, throw them in your starting lineup, and they have a great chance to at least get you 10 points. You cannot do that at running back. They're just not there.
But they're there the following week.
Right.
Right. So the thing is, that's the beauty, is any given week, if you look at the game totals and try to predict the game flow, you can find a fringy wide receiver that can get you 10 points.
Right.
Right. But you can also pick up a running back that can get you 20 the following week.
Exactly.
Right. That's why you shouldn't be spending fab on wide receivers. It's silly.
Yes. Yep.
Good.
100%. 100%. There are
Thank
very
you.
rare occasions that you'll want to spend more than that on a wide receiver, but for the most part, wide receivers, when they go down, it's not like there's a 1-for-1 replacement. Nobody steps up and becomes Justin Jefferson. If Justin Jefferson goes down, God forbid.
No, but they said no. But Dan, no. I have to interrupt you. No, I have this rule, and no, there were so many that came to me and said, "Podfather, we get it. Don't spend up on receivers." But a couple weeks ago, they said, "No, but this is an exception. Dontavian Wicks is an exception. You have to go all in on Dontavian Wicks. He's going to be epic for the next couple weeks." Whoops.
Whoops is right.
Whoops.
Oh,
I know he was hurt. I get it. He was hurt. Okay, but Marvin Harrison was hurt. Dontavian Wicks was hurt. Understood. Point remains valid.
right.
Breece Hall tonight, Monday Night Football. We're doing an early show this week, Monday night, so we don't know what happens with Breece Hall. What are you expecting from Breece Hall tonight?
I'm expecting he's going to run all over the Bills. Their run defense is terrible.
This is
I'm
the week.
expecting 2 touchdowns. One's going to be a 40-plus yard score. He's going to smash 25-plus in PPR. Their new head coach, he's not going to sit around and play the Rodgers games anymore. He wants to lean on his run, lean on his defense, and Breece Hall, I think, is going to get fed. So I think this is going to be a big game. Breece actually started off the year with a couple of really nice games, and only the last couple of weeks has it gone bad for him. I think they're going to get back to it, and it's going to be the Breece show.
Get right week for Breece Hall. You heard it here. And other places, but here also. Better time to buy right now. Lad McConkey or Xavier Worthy?
I'll take Worthy.
Okay.
He's got the path. He's got the quarterback. It took Rashee Rice 12 games to get going. It's going to happen. Because the problem with Worthy is everybody looked at him and they said, oh, he's fast. So he went in the first round. So he can't be any good because we've been conditioned that all these wide receivers that get pushed up into the first round aren't any good.
Henry Ruggs.
Yeah. But the thing is, Worthy never got pushed up. He was already expected to be a first rounder before we knew how fast he was. He was expected to go in the late first round, which is exactly where he did go. His speed did not push him up. The NFL is starting to maybe wise up to this a little bit.
John Ross.
And the thing, what's that?
John Ross.
Yeah, exactly.
Tavon Austin, Darius Hayward-Bay, Corey Coleman.
On and on.
Long list.
But
he's
the thing is, Worthy.
Though. He's not those guys. He's actually a technical route runner at Texas.
Yep, exactly. So I like him for that reason. McConkey, I think he's a solid buy too. I mean, I don't want to be too down on McConkey because I think as Herbert gets more healthy, he's going to eat. There's just no talent at wide receiver or tight end there. So for the same reasons, you're looking at Worthy and McConkey being
That's right.
worthwhile to add on. Between the two, I'd take Worthy, but I think it's close.
Buy high on Demario Douglas.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean,
Competence
Demario
is a hell of
Douglas,
a drug.
I thought maybe there could be a connection between Maye and Polk. Turns out it's Douglas, baby. Douglas, Pop Douglas. He has the experience. He was an underrated wide receiver out of Liberty last year. I love these small school receivers. If you get a small school receiver, it's a day 3 pick that gets rookie year opportunity, he's probably pretty good, Dan.
Probably is. And, competence at quarterback is a hell of a drug when you've spent 5 weeks with Brissett under center.
Mm-hmm.
That had to be hard to endure, and he is the safety blanket, the easy button, maybe Hunter Henry when you get around the goal line, but, through the middle of the field, it's Demario Douglas, and I hope Maye unlocks that deep passing game. That would be fun too, but Pop is right where he needs to be fantasy relevant. So, yeah, if you kept him on your roster or if you're able to pick him up this week, beautiful.
So this week or week 6, heading into week 6, I was super tempted to make some pretty aggressive drops. I had neighbors out, bye weeks, and yet I just couldn't do it. There's a guy I couldn't drop. I couldn't do it. Let me know what you think. I could not bring myself to drop Jordan Whittington.
Yeah, I think you're right. Whittington might actually get better if Kupp is back, because he won't be kind of leading the offense basically in the passing game. When Puka Nacua comes back, that's probably going to take the wind out of his sails a little bit. But we're not sure when he's coming back. We're not even really sure when Kupp is coming back. So Whittington is definitely worth hanging on to. And I think even once Kupp and Nacua are back, Whittington is probably the wide receiver now, wide receiver 3 over Demarcus Robinson. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
Yeah. See? There you go.
Yeah.
Talent.
Yeah. So there were some bye weeks in week 6. Just don't forget Jalen Wright. Don't forget Ty Chandler. Don't forget Jordan Whittington. Jordan Whittington was one of the few, I think, quality waiver wire ads at wide receiver that is actually going to work out. But as usual, when you were picking him up, you didn't have to spend a lot. So congratulations. Give us a defense to stream this week. Have you looked ahead yet to any defensive streamers or tight end streamers? Just give us some kind of streamer, because again, that's your specialty. That's what the article you write every week for Player Profile. Or if you want to give the audience some streamer for week 7, be interesting.
Yeah, definitely. For defense, we'll go there first. And basically, right now, when you're in doubt, you pick on Cleveland, Miami, Tennessee, or the Las Vegas Raiders. And that leads us this week to the Cincinnati, Indianapolis, Buffalo, or Rams defense. And probably Buffalo is my favorite out of those. So that would be the one if it's available. I know Buffalo is kind of they're rostered by a lot of people, but they might be there. Another one, if they're available, Houston has more pressures than any other defense.
That's right.
They haven't led to a ton of points yet, but fantasy points and pressures, at least defensive fantasy points and pressures, are highly correlated. So, that's something where, if you're seeing the pressures, but you aren't seeing the fantasy points, they're probably going to come. You would have to have a really bad secondary to not end up picking up on that. So I like Houston. If you can get a hold of them, I think they might be a good hold. At tight end, if he's available, I like Hunter Henry. I just alluded to him. I think Drake Maye is going to make Hunter Henry playable again. He's a guy who's been proven to do well in the red zone and catch touchdowns. We like touchdowns for tight ends. And if you really need to dig deep, here's the thing. Snoop Huntley, probably not great for, either of the wide receivers, really. Whether Tyreek or Waddle, but Jonnu Smith, if you got to dig deep, he's somebody who's in the area of the field that Huntley can deal with. And so I think he's probably going to get a good number of targets this week. So I would take him if you're really in a jam.
Dan, I'll get you out of here. Give us a bold prediction for the season.
All right. I'm going to say this is finally the year when Lamar Jackson gets by the Chiefs. But Detroit is going to deny him his Super Bowl ring.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. This is only possible because of you allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In Package to continue to make all of this possible, to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.